My biggest piece of advice I've always delivered concerning how to bet on the Heisman during the preseason still rang true last year. Oklahoma quarterback Spencer Rattler had the shortest odds among all candidates. Not only didn't he win the award, he didn't even finish the season as the starting gunslinger for the Sooners. This year, the favorite to win the Heisman is Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud. Last season, the Buckeye finished second in passing efficiency rating, second in passing yards per attempt, and third in passing touchdowns. He was also the second highest ranked pro-style quarterback in his recruiting class per 24/7 Sports. So what we saw from his freshman season is projected to be duplicated. Stroud also plays at an institution where games get a ton of national attention, and voters will watch especially carefully. Still, the advice I gave back then is what I will give again. Never, but never bet on the preseason Heisman favorite. Welcome to the Football Analytics Show podcast. I'm Edward Egros here, continuing our preview of the upcoming football season. The breakdown of Heisman odds looks a little different this go-round than in recent memory. Using sportsoddshistory.com, normally a favorite would be listed at approximately 4-1 or 5-1, or occasionally something longer. But on books like FanDuel as of late August, C.J. Stroud is a 2-1 favorite, followed by Alabama quarterback Bryce Young at 4-1 and USC gunslinger Caleb Williams at 6-1. Implied probability says Stroud has a 33.3% chance of winning, with Young at 20% and Williams at 14.3%. Everyone else is 25-1 or worse, and don't worry, we'll talk about a few of these later. In a way, these odds are proportional to how much national coverage they have been getting this offseason. Sure, guys like Alabama defender Will Anderson has had some of the spotlight too, but these three quarterbacks have been hogging the attention. I've mentioned why Stroud has, but Young won the award last year and is leading arguably a more talented Alabama team that is preseason ranked number 1. And for Williams, though he didn't begin the year as the Sooner quarterback, he did finish it in 2021, completing 65% of his throws for more than 1,900 yards, 21 touchdowns, and a passing efficiency rating of 169.6, which is 5th highest per sportsreference.com. He'll also have Lincoln Riley as his coach, who has been both a quarterback whisperer and a Heisman winner whisperer. But let's circle back to this notion as to why you shouldn't bet on favorites. Last year, Rattler was the favorite, and Young had the third longest odds at 8-1. Alabama's gunslinger hadn't started a game in college yet, and he also wouldn't have Heisman-winning receiver Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle to throw to. It didn't matter. While Rattler and Clemson's DJ Uiagalelei faltered, Young simply didn't. In 2020, Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields were co-favorites at plus 400, but Smith, who was 100-1 with the 29th lowest odds, wound up hoisting the hardware. Two of his Alabama teammates had lower odds in Mac Jones and Najee Harris. His fellow receiver in Jalen Waddle was also 100-1, then fell to 8-1 during Week 8 of the regular season, much lower than Smith, until an unfortunate ankle injury sidelined him the rest of the way. Suffice to say, Smith was a surprise winner. So was Joe Burrow in 2019. Tua Tagovailoa and again Trevor Lawrence were both at 3-1, while Burrow was 40-1. Some bettors claim to have wagered on him at 200-1. Again, a player outside the top 20 wound up winning the whole thing. 2018, Tua was the leader and eventual winner. Kyler Murray was 13th lowest at plus 3,000. Baker Mayfield was third lowest at 10-1, but beat out USC's Sam Darnold. Lamar Jackson was tied for 29th lowest at 100-1 before edging Deshaun Watson. Since 2009, only one favorite went on to finish first. Oregon's Marcus Mariota in 2014 at plus 425. In fact, on more occasions, the Heisman winner wasn't even on the board to start the season than was the betting favorite. It's also worth noting, since 2009, more often a favorite didn't even finish in the top 3 in voting than finished first. Part of this dynamic is, to be blunt, laziness. Mark Ingram won the award in 2009, so he was the favorite in 2010. 2013, when Jameis Winston won, he had the second lowest odds the following campaign. After Lamar Jackson won for Louisville, he had the second highest implied probability the next year. When an underclassman wins or comes close and is eligible again, there seems to be an assumption greatness will be repeated. And while these elite players almost always have incredible resumes beyond 1 year, there are bigger factors at play that sway voters. There's natural volatility, those 50-50 plays like contested catches that may have worked out one season, well, they may fall incomplete or get picked off the next. Granted, that seems to be addressed this time with Stroud as the favorite, not the defending winner of the award, but there is a bigger force at play I'll explain shortly. Recency bias is also something to consider at this time of the year, the cognitive issue where people naturally assign excellence to what got our attention more recently, not necessarily to what's better. That recency bias that gets the public to believe in finalists from the previous year also get us fixated on the quote-unquote surprise that one player few of us expected to be great. Once we start watching enough college football, last season's data get correctly replaced with what happened in the here and now. You've no doubt heard about Heisman moments. They're called that because they're so incredible and gaudy, they were unexpected. If you are going to bet on the Heisman, whether it's in August or midway through the season, what indicators should be on your checklist? And are there names for 2022 to think about? There's no one catch-all trend. In 2011, defensive back and punt returner Tyrann Mathieu finished fifth in Heisman voting, and of course Charles Woodson won it in 1997 as a two-way player, but known more for his work in the secondary. So it's conceivable positions that are almost never considered should be. In the history of the award, 19 schools have boasted multiple winners, which makes sense given we haven't had a first-time Associated Press national champion since Colorado in 1990. All winners since 2009 were at least three-star recruits and played the position they were recruited to play, which, though is worth noting, doesn't narrow down the field significantly. Since 2014, those finishing in the top three in Heisman voting always hail from a Power 5 program. Lastly, since the college football playoff began, 16 of the last 24 players who finished in the top three each season made the Final Four. Nearly all of the 8 who didn't at least came close and almost always won their conference. So team success does have some correlation. Now, this last trend is worth exploration. Again, using sportsoddeshistory.com, if you go by preseason odds for the Heisman winners team to win the national championship, those payouts tend to be lower and overall less surprising. Since 2013, no team had larger than 60-1 odds to win the title for a group that wound up representing the Heisman winner, Louisville in 2016 with Lamar Jackson, who again had 100-1 odds to be considered college football's best player, and the Cardinals were never really in contention, serving as the only recent outlier here. In terms of qualitative process, it's always about figuring out a path for team success. If LSU were to shock Alabama and win the SEC, how would they do that? Probably with elite quarterback play, which they got from Joe Burrow. How might Alabama look so dominant that no other program's players should be considered? Probably with big leads and running the ball a lot, or a receiver scoring 3 touchdowns a game. The odds should probably be greater for the Heisman than a team's title chances because each school could have multiple players, but imagining a narrative or a path to a national championship can be helpful. For a process, it's best to begin with a list of teams that will have excellent seasons, whether it's consulting the power rank, which I recommend, or coming up with a list of your own. Once again, this year seems to be top-heavy, with Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia leading the way. That fourth spot is tricky, but using a wisdom of the crowd's approach by Nate Manzo at CFB Nate on Twitter, both the power rank and the group agree that fourth spot belongs to Clemson. DJ Uiagalelei is still the starting quarterback for the Tigers and still was the number one pro-style QB of his class, just ahead of Stroud. He is 20-1. As for those top 3 programs, Georgia quarterback Stetson Bennett will now have a full season as the starter to put together a resume fit for a finalist. We'll go over why he's a better quarterback than you might think in another episode, but for now, more will be asked of him after Georgia loses a lot of defensive talent. Bennett also has coaching consistency at both offensive coordinator and head coach, and he's a substantial 100-1. If you're looking beyond quarterback for Alabama and Ohio State, the Tide should begin with edge rusher Will Anderson. He finished last season as college football sacks leader and tackles for loss leader. It's also possible Alabama will blow out everyone they face, which would limit the number of meaningful snaps for key offensive playmakers. It may not have the same effect defensively. Anderson is 30-1. Then for Ohio State, wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba finished third last season in total yards and will be expected to lead the way now that Chris Olave is now a pro. He is 50-1. Is there a dark horse that can replace any of the top four and make the college football playoff? It would require elite quarterback play, and collegefootballdata.com does calculate both player predicted points added and expected points added for every quarterback from last season, filtering out garbage time. Those who rank highest in average PPA per play from a team that conceivably could finish in the top four are Miami's Tyler Van Dyke at 40-1. If it's not Clemson to win the ACC, Miami has the second shortest odds. There's also Utah's Cameron Rising at 66-1. The Utes are favored to win the Pac-12 and have the highest aggregate rating on the West Coast at 8th. And eventually someone from the Pac-12 has to make the playoff eventually, right? If you want a super long shot, how about Arkansas's KJ Jefferson at 125-1? If the Hogs surpass expectations, it's because Jefferson went nuts. The books have more than 80 candidates on the board, and it's possible the winner isn't even listed. Right now, if I had to pick only one that's not one of the top three, I like Miami's Tyler Van Dyke. His 24/7 sports composite score was 4 stars as the 7th best pro-style quarterback of his class. He has plenty of experience, even if he's a sophomore, and Miami should be a top 20 program that, again, is within striking distance of Clemson. But listing off several names does point back to the overall thesis. The Heisman race is nearly impossible to handicap without games because voters succumb to recency bias when casting their ballots late in the regular season. There's the natural element of surprise we crave, and that the favorite almost never wins it. There may be value in watching a few games, seeing who is standing out, and then waiting for that marquee game between two highly ranked teams or a contest determining a division winner where that marquee Heisman moment could occur. It also helps to look at NFL draft boards because those have done a better job at reflecting talent, almost going in reverse chronological order as to who is getting attention. Those are fluid at this time of year, but just remember this, if nothing else. C.J. Stroud does not present value right now. Thanks again for listening to this installment of the Football Analytics Show. This is Edward Egros. Please follow me on Twitter and Instagram for my latest insights at EdWithSports. That's at EdWithSports. The Football Analytics Show is also sponsored by listeners like you. These kind, generous people also get access to a premium episode every month. If you choose to donate, you'll get access to an episode on home and rest advantage in football. To learn more, go to patreon.com/footballanalytics. Once again, that's patreon.com/footballanalytics. Thanks again for listening, and take care.